Shalom Uvracha. Today, we're going to talk about something which we're all familiar with. We're going to talk about expectations. Now, expectations sounds like, okay, we have great expectations. We want a lot of things in life. No problem, right? Well, expectations are not as simple as they might seem. Let's just take a few examples. We'll start off with this, and then we'll see how expectations could be a little bit more complicated than we might think. Okay, let's take a few cases. Let's say I come home, and I'm expecting my house to be clean. No. I'm not just expecting the house to be clean. I want all of the kids to be smiling and saying, "Oh, hi, Abba, it's so great to see you." That's my expectation. Now, what happens if I come home and, it's not exactly like that? Then what happens? Ugh, not so good. If I'm expecting there to be something there and it's not there, what happens? Disappointment. Let's say I come to my spouse and I'm expecting to talk about something and I want them to have understanding for me. And I want to feel love, I want to feel acceptance. Expecting. Well, what's wrong with that? I expect to have a loving relationship with my spouse. Well, what if my spouse is tired or in a bad mood? Then what happens? Disappointments. And then what happens if we expect to come to our Avodat Hashem? We expect to daven. We come to shul in the morning, expect to have a kavanah. And all of a sudden, our mind starts thinking about all kinds of things. I don't know if it happens to you, but it sometimes happens to me that I think about a few more things that I'm supposed to be thinking about during davening. And all of a sudden, I expected to be able to daven with kavanah. And where? So what's the main problem with expectations? I think you've understood by now. The problem with expectations is we're disappointments. As soon as we have expectations, we automatically build into that disappointments. Now, if you talk about children, for example, and this is something that I'm taking from Rav Yakovson's book of Chinuch, a lot of times he says, if children expect something, they expect to be taken for a vacation. They expect to be given ice cream at the end of Shabbos. They expect to get a telephone of some kind or another. Then it's easy for them just to get disappointed. Now, disappointment, okay, so I'm disappointed. What's the big deal? The problem with disappointments, and here's the crux of the matter, is when we get disappointed, we feel like we need to compensate for our disappointments. In other words, if I come home and I expect for my wife and kids to be all smiling, "Hello, Abba, we're so happy to see you," and now they're disappointed, now I'm going to get angry. I'm going to get sad. I'm going to get upset. Why? Because I have to compensate myself for those expectations. The disappointments leaves an empty hole in my heart, and now I have to fill it with something. And that's where it says, Rav Yakovson says, it becomes the most dangerous. When we try to fill our hearts with our disappointments, to compensate, then we get angry and then we do things that we don't want to do. So we can see already that expectations is a really big problem. But there's something that's not so clear to me. Okay, so that means that I'm never supposed to expect anything? I was taught that we're supposed to expect things. For example, it says in the Gemara that one of the questions that Hashem will ask us when we come to Olam HaMemet after 120 years, did we expect the Mashiach to come? Tzipita liYeshua. Did you expect for the Geula to come? And if you didn't expect for the Geula to come, then it's a problem. What about if I'm in a relationship with my spouse and I think to myself, well, I don't want to have any expectations, so maybe things won't work out. Maybe the problems that we're having in our Shalom Bayit just won't work out. So am I supposed to expect that things will work out with my spouse? Am I supposed to expect that when I come to shul, if I have ratzon to connect to Hashem, that eventually I'll connect to Hashem? Maybe I won't. Maybe I shouldn't have those expectations. So expectations, are they good or are they bad? Not so clear. So what's the difference between the two things that I mentioned? Well, on the first hand, we had expectations for things to occur that I thought should happen. I thought that my family should be lined up at the door waiting to greet me with smiles and with greetings. "Hello, Abba, how are you?" Well, that's something that's not necessarily realistic. It could be something that I want, but it's not something that I'm guaranteed to happen. The things that the Rabbanu Shalom says, the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, those expectations, those are realistic. Why? Because we're supposed to believe, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shlema, b'bi'at HaMashiach, that Hashem will bring the Mashiach. I have to believe that. I have to have expectations that what Hashem said is true. Just like Hashem said that when Hashem brings two people under a chuppah, and there's kiddushin, and there's kedusha, that those two people are meant to be together. They're two halves of the same neshama. So it's fair for me to expect, for me, if I have ratzon, and I do avodah, that eventually my wife and I will come to Shalom Bayit. It's acceptable that if I really want to have ratzon to connect to Hashem, and I daven with Moshe Tzarich, like it should be, then eventually I will have connections to Hashem. So basically what we're saying is, when we have expectations, we have to be very careful. Are they my expectations, or are they expectations that we're getting from Hashem? And what are we basically talking about when we're talking about these expectations? Expectations on the one hand of my expectations versus Hashem expectations. What we're talking about is emunah. Because if I have emunah in Hashem. Do I have emunah in myself that I'm going to be able to do things? I can have ratzon. I can have ratzon that I'm going to be able to try, but at the outcome, I'm not in control. Only Hashem is in control of the outcome. I can't have expectations that I'm going to have emunah in what's going to be. You know, the Bnei Yissaschar, Rabbi Tzvi Elimelech Medinov, in his Sefer Bnei Yissaschar, talks about each one of the Jewish months. And he says each one of the months has a special midah. What is the midah of the Chodesh of Tammuz, which we're in right now? He says it's a midah of the Kol Zeh Einenu Shoveli. None of this is worthwhile. Who is he quoting? He's quoting Haman Harasha. In the story of the Megillah, when Haman came home, he had all his family with him. He had riches, he had power, but Mordechai wouldn't bow down to him. And he said to his wife and his followers, all of this is not worthy to me, but Kol Zeh Einenu Shoveli. Rabbi Tzvi Elimelech of Din of the Bnei Yissaschar says, that's the problem with Chodesh Tammuz, Chodesh of Din. Sometimes we feel about ourselves, this is not good enough. I want more. Magieli, I want more. I want more. I expect more. I expect for my spouse to give me more. What they're giving is not enough. What I'm giving to myself is not enough. I feel no good. I feel I am not fulfilling my expectations. I feel my kids are not fulfilling expectations. I get down on them. I get disappointed. I get angry. Rabbi Tzvi Elimelech Medinov says, no, stop. That's the midah of Haman. You can't be in a situation where you're constantly expecting and saying, V'kol zeh einenu shoveli. You have to be in a midah of accepting what things are going on in your life. You can have ratzon to do more, but you can only expect what Hashem promises you. In the Michtavim that Rabbi Natan wrote to his son, in Alim the Trufa, Rabbi Natan basically said something very similar. He says in Miyom Dalad Milech Lecha, he says, if a person looks for the things that are missing in his life, he'll always see that there are more things missing in his life. But what he has to see is that Hashem is constantly giving him pure chesed all the time. That the things that he's receiving are so wonderful. If I appreciate what Hashem is giving to me, and then I can appreciate that, I can say, thank you, Hashem. I'm appreciating what you're giving to me. Now, when I come home and I see my family is in a situation where it's not exactly what I expected, I can have two chances. Either I can appreciate the chesed that Hashem is giving me, that I have a wife and children, that I have what I want, and I can also say thank you for that, and then I can feel fulfilled. I can feel good about myself. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't have to want more. I can want more. I can have ratzon. I can talk to Hashem about this. I have ratzon that my house should be neat. But if I have expectations, then I'll be disappointed. And that's the sod. To have ratzon, yes. To have ratzon, to have tefillah, to ask Hashem for where I want to be. But my expectation should be whatever Hashem gives me, chesed chinam, like Rabbi Natan says to his son. If we will understand this, we'll be able to deal with the message of Tammuz, which is so carefully crafted, is that that we're not happy with anything that we have. Let's start being happy with what we have. Let's have emunah that what Hashem is giving us is exactly what we need. And when it comes to the Rabbanu Shalom, when we tzipita leYeshua, tzipita leBeit HaMikdash, when we expect the Beit HaMikdash, that's something that Hashem promised us. That's something that we can expect. That's something we can hang our hat on. That's something we need to have ratzon and belief be'amunah shlema b'viat HaMashiach, that Hashem will bring the Mashiach. Let's be careful about expectations and be careful about disappointments, because disappointments lead to anger, and none of us want that to follow Sinat Chinam in these weeks of Beit HaMitzarim, where we're supposed to be fixing that thing, fixing Chesed Chinam. We can all try just a little bit to do some chesed chinam, to feel chesed chinam towards Hashem, pure kindness towards our wives, pure kindness towards our children, pure kindness towards ourselves. Let's all give ourselves a break. Let's stop expecting so much from ourselves and say to ourselves, I want more, but I'm happy with what I have. Thank you, Hashem, for giving me the arkochot. If we can do this, we can be metaken, and we can be zocha to binyan Beit HaMikdash be'her v'yameinu. Amen.